Hi, I am here with a second video to take you on a journey through Wilfred Owen's Exposure. This powerful poem was written by the renowned World War I poet Wilfred Owen and was published posthumously in 1920. The poem describes the harsh realities of war and the terrible conditions that soldiers faced during the winter of 1917. The poem is a response to the harsh realities of trench warfare and the psychological toll it took on soldiers. The overall tone of the poem is one of despair and hopelessness, with Owen painting a bleak picture of the soldiers' experience on the front lines. In the first stanza, the soldiers are described as being exposed to the elements, with the merciless iced east winds blowing through their clothing and chilling them to the bone. This sets the scene for the rest of the poem and highlights the harsh conditions that the soldiers were forced to endure. The use of the word "we" creates a sense of camaraderie among the soldiers, but also highlights their vulnerability. In this stanza, the soldiers are depicted as watching and listening to the wind blowing on the barbed wire. The wind is compared to the agony of men trapped in brambles. The constant sound of gunfire is heard from a distance, as if it were a rumor from another war. The soldiers are questioning the purpose of their presence in this hostile environment. In this stanza, the soldiers describe the beginning of another day of war. They note the misery that sets in with the dawn and the unrelenting nature of the conflict. War lasts, rain soaks, and clouds sag stormy. The soldiers also personify the dawn, describing it as massing in the east with a melancholy army that attacks the shivering ranks of grey clouds. However, despite this vivid imagery, the soldiers note that nothing happens, conveying a sense of hopelessness and futility in the face of the ongoing conflict. In this stanza, from the poem, the soldiers are experiencing a lull in the battle. Bullets fly overhead, but they pose less danger than the bitter cold, which causes the snow to shudder and turn black. The soldiers watch the snowflakes drift aimlessly in the wind, but nothing significant occurs. The stanza highlights the soldiers' sense of helplessness and the monotony of war. This personification creates a sense of chaos and confusion and highlights the soldiers' sense of disorientation. This stanza Owens describes the intense cold and the snow that the soldiers experienced during the First World War. The snowflakes are described as creeping up stealthily, and the soldiers are forced to hide in holes, giving up on their dreams and staring blankly into the ditches covered with grass. They are so tired and sun-dazed that they start to drift off, even as the snowflakes continue to fall around them. The stanza ends with a question, questioning if the soldiers are dying, adding to the ominous and bleak atmosphere of the poem. In this sixth stanza, the soldiers describe their return from the battlefront, where they feel like ghosts haunting their own homes. They see the sunk fires that have gone out, leaving only smoldering embers, and the crusted dark red jewels of dried blood on the battlefield. Meanwhile, the innocent mice are able to enjoy the empty houses, as shutters and doors are all closed. The soldiers, on the other hand, feel shut out from their own homes and are forced to turn back to the battlefield, where they are dying. The stanza uses vivid imagery to convey the sense of isolation and despair felt by soldiers during war. This stanza, Wilfred Owen reflects the fear and despair felt by soldiers during the bitter war. The soldiers believe that the only warmth they will experience is from fires, and even the sun, which is typically associated with warmth and happiness, no longer feels true. The idea of God's invincible spring, typically a symbol of hope and renewal, instead inspires fear in the soldiers, as their love for God and faith in humanity seems to be dying along with them on the battlefield. The soldiers lie out in the cold, not out of reluctance, but because it is a reflection of the dying love and hope they feel. Finally, in the eighth stanza, Owen concludes the poem by describing the soldiers' fate. They will suffer back keen joys and pains, and linger sick for years after the war is over. This emphasizes the long-lasting effects of war and the toll it takes on the soldiers who fight it. Nowadays, according to the psychology, this phenomenon is called PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, that imprints a long-lasting effect on the soldier's mental and physical health. Final analysis. Exposure is a powerful anti-war poem that exposes the brutal reality of trench warfare. Owen's use of vivid imagery and metaphor creates a sense of desolation and hopelessness, and highlights the futility of war. The poem is also notable for its use of repetition, particularly the repetition of the word "but," which creates a sense of uncertainty and fear. Throughout the poem, Owen uses personification and metaphor to create a sense of chaos and confusion. The soldiers are described as being sunk in the snow, which suggests that they are trapped and unable to escape. The wind is personified as being mad, which creates a sense of disorientation and disconnection from reality. These techniques help to convey the soldiers' sense of despair and hopelessness, and their sense of being trapped in an endless cycle of waiting and fear. Ultimately, exposure is a poignant reminder of the human cost of war. The soldiers in the poem are not heroes or villains, but ordinary men who have been forced to endure unimaginable hardship and suffering. The poem serves as a powerful indictment of war and a call for peace and understanding in the face of conflict. It reminds us that war is not a glorious adventure, but a tragic and senseless waste of life and resources.